Hi, my name is Oriana Bretschker, and I'm the CEO and co-founder at AquaCycle, and welcome to Wastewater Wednesdays. So this week, we're going to talk about a little bit of sticker shock relative to what can happen when you have to manage wastewater from your production facility. Sad to say, it's not free. And as we are in that time of year where everybody's planning their capital budgets, it's important to consider, okay, where do you have to invest those dollars to keep your facility continuing to grow and generating the revenue you need? Well, if wastewater is a part of that discussion, some things you need to take into consideration. Basically, you've got three options relative to wastewater management at an industrial facility. You can do on-site treatment. You can send it to the city if you're permitted to do so, and you could haul it away to a third-party disposal center if that's required. All of these things have a cost, and as you start to evaluate these three options, there are some maybe hidden costs that you haven't necessarily considered. So let's start with the easy ones first. So hauling offsite. All right, so say you've got an environmental services company, they can come and collect your waste and then they will dispose of it wherever it's needed. Depending on the type of waste that you're generating, it may have to go through a hazardous waste facility, which will increase the cost. Depending on where they have to bring it in terms of who's still accepting waste, whether it's hazardous or not, there could be some significant distance traveled. So you're going to be paying for the trucking, the tipping fee, as well as the labor cost associated with that. Those fees are variable, all dependent on what's happening on the road, what's happening with the company you're contracting with, what's happening at the facility that's receiving that wastewater. So while it may be a good interim solution, and maybe it often could be your most cost effective, you do have to think to the future in terms of, are those rates going to go up? By how much? And is it really safe for me to have those trucks on the road, depending on the kind of waste that you have? Even though you're paying for some liability insurance, etc., with that environmental services company, there's still the risk. If something goes off the road, there's an accident, there's a pollution event, the person whose waste was carried is almost always named, right? So there is a reputational risk of having your waste on the road in trucks on a consistent basis. So also something to consider. Now, your second easiest option, right, is going to be connecting to your local sewer and discharging to the city. In some cases, though, if you're a larger producer in a smaller municipality, that could be more challenging because the smaller municipality may not necessarily have the infrastructure to accept your industrial waste. So what to do? Well, you got to first talk to your city, talk to your water authority, listen to, where their restrictions are, what kind of rates they would be willing to negotiate with you, and then also make sure to ask lots of questions in terms of how are those rates going to increase if you increase your production volume, if you expand a line or a different product, what is going to happen with that relationship and with what the city needs to do to ensure that you have discharge as well as all of the ratepayers in that community. So important to have that discussion early to really understand what it is that your surcharge thresholds will be, what your permit compliance requirements are going to be, and then ultimately, as much as you can, try to get their vision for the future in terms of how those rates are going to go up and how that might impact your business. Some cities will just say, no, can't take it. We don't have the capacity, in which case you got to go back and reevaluate your hauling, or you go to your on-site treatment option. Now, while the sticker shock for on-site treatment is quite a shock for many, it is actually your most sustainable option in terms of business growth and control over your wastewater. And this can be very meaningful for you, especially if you have expansion plans in the future. And there are opportunities to do very cost-effective wastewater treatment on site, especially if you're working through how to minimize the volume and ultimately maximize the treatment capacity. And that happens through a technology like AquaCycles, where we work with you to identify all the different parts in your production where you're generating high polluted wastewater. We know it's mostly organics, but we want to isolate all of those organics into a very small volume so we can give you a small footprint, very cost-effective solution, and we're the operators. You don't have to take it on. The other thing to keep in mind as you're considering on-site treatment versus sending to the city versus hauling is that that investment is the only way you can actually calculate a return on investment. So discharge to the city, there's always going to be rates for volume and for pollution. Hauling offsite, there's always going to be rates for that particular service. And essentially like paying rent. You're not investing into an asset that ultimately can give you a payback and is of value to your business. So most of the clients that we work with in food and beverage are experiencing a return on investment between 12 and 24 months. And so that usually falls well within everybody's required budgeting targets. And so as you're thinking through where you want to invest your dollars and how you want to best manage your wastewater treatment, don't forget that there are very viable options for on-site treatment.